really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by the talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful south coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hey, Coos County, hello, Oregon, America, South Coast and beyond. I want to thank you all for joining me. This is going to be a fantabulous show. We've got a couple of county commissioners for you, and we're going to bring them on, and we're going to talk to them. We're going to ask them a few questions. This is going to be an easy peasy forum, and we'll allow them to pretty much talk amongst themselves if they want to rebut each other, and it's going to be pretty easy. I'm going to bring them on. I'll explain to them the rules, but I want you all to know, if you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube and this is where you're catching it, you can ask questions or make a comment from Facebook or YouTube. The other social media platforms, they don't come through with the questions. Rumble and Twitter, if you're on Rumble or Twitter, neither of them allow those questions that you ask underneath the video while it's playing to be transmitted to where I can see your question or comment. And so we will answer or let you ask questions, and if you got any, we'll let you ask the candidates. And we got two candidates running for commissioner. Three of them are actually running, but I only have two here tonight. And I'm going to bring them on, and I'll explain why the third one isn't here. And the first one that I want to bring on is Chris Castleman. Chris, how you doing? Now I can't hear you. You're muted.
How about now?
That's pretty good.
All right,
and
how's it going?
Pretty good. And I got Drew Farmer. Hey, Drew, how you doing? All right.
6 foot over, big 6 foot under.
That is true. That is true. And you know, we fight that every day here in Oregon. I mean, you know, the way things are going, who knows how far it's going to be before we're all 6 feet under. And you guys are young men. You guys are relatively young men, and I really enjoy this because when I started in politics and I was doing these type of candidate forums, it was always old people. And it's so nice to have two young guys on here because I you know, if you ever want to feel young, go to the city council meeting is what I tell people. I'm not kidding you. The Bandon City Council, it's 72 and over is I think the limit right now. But I wanted to tell everyone what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to ask questions. And because Bob isn't here, Bob said, and I called him Wednesday, said that he doesn't argue with squirrels. So I guess that's you two. You two are the squirrels. And I don't know what it is. I guess you got to have nuts to actually be afraid of squirrels. But that's what he said. And I thought it was a little ridiculous. But, you know, hey, if he wants to miss out on the best candidate forum in the county, well, that's his choice. And so I'm going to ask you guys questions, and because Bob's not here and we've got plenty of time, I'm going to let you answer until you come to your natural conclusion of your answer. And because I'm giving you that time to answer, if you want to rebut what the other person has said, you're more than welcome to do that. And if you're the second one who gets a question and you want to come back with a rebuttal of what the other one has said, you're more than welcome to do that. Just let me know. and just say, I want to rebut what he said, and I'll be more than happy to allow you to respond to him. This ain't the League of Women Voters here. No, this is bare knuckle boxing, no holds barred kind of candidate forum. And I think you guys are up to it. I think it's been an incredible race. And of course, I'm going to ask the first question. I'm going to start with Chris Castleman just because of alphabetical order that he comes in. And it's going to be a snowball question. First question, why, Chris, are you running for county commissioner?
Okay, well, it's a pretty simple one for me. I started looking into the crime situation in Coos County. I was wondering why there's such a state of lawlessness around here. What can be done? What aren't we doing enough of? And I started speaking up at city council meetings and speaking up at county commissioner meetings. And I just didn't feel like anyone was really listening. Sometimes I was told to stop talking. Sometimes I was told that I was a liar. And then finally at the county commission meeting, I just felt like it fell on deaf ears. I asked them if do they feel like that we're in an unacceptable state of lawlessness? You know, do you feel that the current way that crime is being processed or not being processed in the county, do you find that acceptable enough? And I don't. Personally, I don't find it acceptable. And they didn't really want to do anything. They came up with this levy solution. They were talking about this at the time, and no one really wanted to address crime other than from a financial standpoint. And so I just walked down to the election office and I decided to run. I will say that there was a little bit of another reason why. I saw an article that Drew Farmer had filed, and I just thought to myself, that's got to be one of the worst options for our county. So I decided to run for those two reasons.
All right, Drew, you want to answer that question? Why are you running for Coos County Commissioner?
I'm curious what the article was first.
I'm kind of curious too.
Oh, the article said that you had filed to run back in September.
Okay. That was the solution that was preposterous. All right, then. So I'm running. I filed opening day because this is what I knew the natural progression was going to be. The reason I filed is I've been able to make some accomplishments over my 7 years on council, and particularly over the course of the last year. I was able to get a change to a governor's executive order while I've been within the last year. I worked with Boomer Wright, a Republican, and we were able to get a Democrat governor to change her direction. We were able to bring the other 80% of Oregon into an opportunity to get surplus land. And today I forwarded the material over to Bandon, Coquille, and North Bend for the land they can get. So that was a big win. I was able to push through my position on the City County Insurance Board for a lawsuit against the Oregon Health Authority to correct the state hospital. And then broadly, because of my experience here, I'm familiar with how we got to this position in the crime issue. I'm familiar with how long the drug issue has been here, and I've seen the impact over the generations that I went to school with, my family went to school with. And the intercept that keeps getting missed is how to address flow and supply. So my top three, though, my first one is housing. Because as an employer, at one point I had over 200 employees. I know what a pain it is to hire people, especially when they don't have anywhere to live. And that was one of the biggest things we ran into here. Aside from that, if I can't get case managers, we can't address homelessness. If I can't get medical staff, we can't address most of our population because our median age here is 46. Chris and I are only young in Coos County. After that, we have the mental health issue. We know that homelessness, 70% of the individuals have a mental health issue. So if we have a robust mental health system and supported living opportunity, we can address up to 70% of homelessness. And then on the drug side, I want to see a higher investment into the interagency narcotics team. I want to see cohesion that's led by the county at the level of the community, particularly around neighborhood watches, and more exploration and initiative with our state partners, county partners, and cities when we go up to Salem and lobby. Because at this time, my understanding is that Bob has talked about pulling Coos County out of the Association of Counties because he doesn't see a value. I've used the Association of Counties when we got the lawsuit against the Oregon Health Authority. So I see it as a failure to use the tools available. And I should clarify, I came into this at the start. Nobody was running against me when I got in. So I'm not worried about running against anybody. It's things I've already done and I could build on if I had more time to do them.
All right. Okay. First question, and I'm going to start with you, Drew. Are you for or against the tax levy, and why?
The public safety levy specifically?
Yes.
Okay. For it right now because I don't see them as having an alternative. They got here over the course of years. It's going to take probably years to get out of it. The levy could be canceled at a later date if that opportunity comes up. One opportunity I'm aware of that I've been reached out to about, there have been 2 occasions where Coos County could have gotten Old Wagon Road back in a partnership with the Coquille tribe for co-management. Jobs and product would have stayed in the community, and it would have raised around $4 million and more per year through the co-management agreement, which matches the deficit currently. So that's one thing we could be pursuing. But in this moment, they don't have an alternative if we want to keep the police and DA levels we have. So that would be why I would support it right now.
Chris, the same question. Are you for or against the safety levy, and why?
I'm against it, and I'll get to that in a second. I wanted to first mention that I also ran because Bob Main was going to rerun for a 5th term. I'm against career politicians. It's pretty insane to me to see that someone feels that after 15 years, 16 years as county commissioner, that they still have work to do. I think that 15, 16 years is plenty of time to clean things up and get us back on track. I don't know why he hasn't done that. But the public safety levy, well, same thing. I mean, why has this not been solved? The public safety levy has been proposed over and over again. It's been shot down by voters over and over again. We've been dealing with the crime and public safety issue since, I believe it was 2006, when they asked for a public safety levy. It failed, and they defunded the police back then. They laid off almost half of the public safety force. That's the district attorney and the sheriff's office. They closed the jail down from 250 beds down to 100. And we've had almost 2 decades to come up with a better solution, and we haven't. And almost that entire time, we've been we've had John Sweet and Bob Main in leadership, and they have not come up with a solution. Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you. You're just your picture is freezing every now and then.
Oh.
Okay, I'm back now.
Yep.
Continue.
All right. So I forgot where I was. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
15 years doing the same thing.
Yeah. And I just don't understand why we haven't come up with a solution. So I don't think it's going to pass. If it does pass, well, I guess we have 5 more years to come up with a solution, or maybe even less, because I believe we'll run out of money in about 2 years, even if it passes. But I don't think it's going to pass. And because it won't pass, we need to have a solution as a backup. And like Drew just mentioned, he doesn't think there's an alternative. Bob doesn't think there's an alternative. So if that levy doesn't pass, we're going to potentially be electing Bob or Drew to a position where they do not know how to solve the public safety crisis that we're facing. And so just by default, with the county funds we have, we need to fund public safety and law enforcement first, to have set standards and minimums for the jail and for the district attorney, and we fund those first. If we don't fund those first, they end up getting cut. And I believe that these other departments in the county, like maintenance or IT or the assessor's office, they might serve functions in our county government, but are they more important functions than keeping our communities safe? And I don't believe they are.
All right.
I'll address that real quick.
Go ahead, please do.
So I was saying by their deadline, obviously we're not in the seat yet, so we can't play with it to make changes. I do think we have opportunities. But you've mentioned a couple times the idea of pulling the money out of the assessor, pulling the money out of planning, and at different meetings you've mentioned just not having those departments essentially. And I think one of the benefits of having worked with this is knowing what that causes. Those two departments are required by state statute to exist. What happens when you get rid of a department that is required by state statute is the state steps in and does it for you and still bills you. So if we were to take that route, instead of ending up with this much better safety program at the cost of those, we would end up still having to pay for those, and we would have lost all local control and handed it over to the state instead. So while it might sound good to just kick out there, the reality is you will take away local control by taking that path. It's a thing you can do, maybe, but it's not a place you're going to want to be.
Chris, you want to address that?
I mean, yeah, in general, it's just a bunch of political bullshit. It's a bunch of stuff we hear from politicians that, oh, sorry, our hands are tied by the state. It's excuse after excuse. The fact is they can do this. The fact is that the jail is also mandated. That it's almost the only function that the sheriff has is to have a jail that is open. And it's more than reasonable for our county to set standards. Our county should say, hey, our jail needs to have a minimum of 150 beds. Our DA's office needs to have a minimum of 10 prosecutors. That is completely reasonable to set those minimum standards and to fund them first before sending extra money to the assessor's office or to maintenance. It absolutely can be done. And it's not about pulling money out of those departments. It's about not putting it into those departments. It's when we go through the budget piece by piece and start allocating money, you start at the top, and law enforcement needs to be at the top.
Okay, I've got a question. I got a question from that. This might actually lead into what you were going to say, because I'm going to ask you, Drew, and I'll give you a chance, Chris, to answer this question too. If we don't have a county assessor, or we get rid of enough employees to do the job property in county assessor, the county treasurer, or any of the other offices that are paid through the general fund, why not have the state take it over? And then they would be the ones responsible for it. Wouldn't that be one way to alleviate the county's responsibility over those departments, even though we're giving up some of our autonomy as a county to the state? But the state, in many ways, a lot of people believe, have put us in this situation as well. How would you respond to that, Drew?
Yeah, I can see the train of logic on that one. The problem is that our tax dollars filter through the state before we receive them back. And what would happen is essentially a garnishment. We've seen this example already. Chris has been here less than 2 years, so some of these things you just haven't had the opportunity to see yet. Setting those statutory minimums on staffing was deemed unconstitutional under Oregon law more than a decade ago. So that route's been traveled before. But that's what would happen with those departments, is the state would give you someone, issue you the bill, and if you said, well, I don't want to pay my bill, they'll just take it out of your tax dollars before they come back to the community. If you want to look at an example similar to this, you could look at public health down in Curry County. What they did a few years ago, they entered into a lawsuit with their public health provider, got rid of them, and then it took a while, but eventually the state came in, put in place a contractor. And I don't know if they ever publicly said it, but because I worked in the public health sector around that time frame, the general gist was this county needs to not talk to us, or you're gonna have to do something with them. So that would be the consequence there. The better course is to look at better ways to make funding, to go through what contracts are existing. When I got into Bay Area Enterprises, when I was running that, they had a $1.3 million budget with about a $250,000 deficit for the year when I got in. And it was a year or two, after about a year of renegotiating contracts and some small changes to benefits, it was flat again. So the bleed had stopped completely. What happens a lot when you get an institution that's been around a long time is they forget to review their contracts and look for what they can get out of things. And I think we've seen that as well in something both Chris and I proposed with the, well, Chris, I think you had gone for an emergency order around crime. I had suggested emergency order around fentanyl. And yeah, the county, those would fall under Bob's purview because he's in the public safety liaison role. He's taken no action. I think instead he let you know that we're both squirrels, and he asked you to ask me about my my family.
Chris,
So
you want to
he's
address
good at
that one?
Sure. First off, Drew makes my job easier because he shows exactly what a career politician will bring to Coos County. He doesn't answer the question. He didn't propose a solution for the crime crisis. He just wants to talk about what we can't do. He wants to give us examples of other counties and other cities and what we can't do. And I like to talk about what we can do and push things forward. So, but I'll also address, he said, I've lived here for less than 2 years. That's false. I've lived here for about 3 years now. And before I lived here, I lived in other places. I didn't just like pop up on planet Earth. I've lived in other places, and I've seen how other places work. And I've also seen how other places don't work. For example, I spent 5 years in California, and what I saw in California made me leave because of politicians like Drew, because they support the policies of the liberal left wing. They support these policies that are destructive to America, and they constantly lecture citizens on what we can't do. So I've seen how bad it can get because I've been in California for 5 years. Before that, I was in other states that were run by, like New York was run by liberal policies, but I was in some areas that were Republican. And I've constantly seen this battle between these conservative and liberal policies, and I can see how they work and don't work. So that's what I've seen, and that's kind of my resume. I don't have a political resume. I don't have a list of committees that I've been on and city council positions that I've been on, but that doesn't mean that I don't have experience. What I've experienced is kind of boots on the ground. I've had 3 small businesses. I've been all over the country. I love speaking with people from all different backgrounds and understanding what pains them and what they think they can do about it, or what they think our leaders should be doing about it. And I've drifted. So what was the original question
My
that you
original
asked, Drew?
question is that if we don't get the safety levy to pass, and there are several offices that you want to cut before you cut law enforcement and the DA, and it's the treasurer, the assessor, the county clerk's office, and I forget the other offices or departments, why not allow them to let the state take them over, and then the burden is upon the state? And that was my question to Drew, which is my question to you.
Right. So I think Drew mentioned public health, and I've seen that. I have not seen another county in Oregon defund the assessor's office or defund other programs like that. So I don't think we know what that would look like, but I'm not talking about a full defund at this moment. What I'm talking about is a cutback to their budget. And we've seen that because the past few weeks, the county has done the budget, and they proposed two sets of budgets. They proposed the regular budget if the levy passes, and then each department proposed a 15% cutback if the levy does not pass. So we walked through line item after line item, and we saw how a 15% cut will affect each department. So it does have an effect, but it's not a catastrophic effect to the assessor's office. It's not a catastrophic effect to the maintenance department or to IT. Those departments don't see a catastrophic effect that would allow the state to come in and take over. That's not what we're talking about. However, the effect it had on law enforcement, it would take us back down to 50 beds, and we would have less people on patrol. We would have less district attorneys than we have now. I just spoke with a deputy, and they're talking about laying off 30 people within the sheriff's office. That's absolutely insane. And if these other departments can take a 15% cut, I bet they can take a 20% cut or a 30% cut. And we can redo the budget in a way that keeps the jail open. If we're running out of money, we might not be able to keep a patrol side as strong as we would want. And that's maybe a decision we'll have to make at some point. But right now, we can absolutely fund the jail. And I don't know why we haven't been making these cuts before. I mean, do our leaders not have any foresight? Did they not know this was coming? And we know they did because they proposed this levy 2 years ago. And so they could have been cutting the budget back then for these departments like the assessor and IT, but they didn't. They chose to give everybody raises and spend the money so that they could blackmail the public and say, hey guys, do you support public safety or not? Well, yes, we do, but we also support being fiscally responsible. And that's what the topic is actually about.
Drew, you want to rebut on that? Because you just look like you have a rebuttal.
I just, yeah, when they show you that budget where they cut folks 15% and you're looking at this big cut to police and you're thinking, well, they could probably cut more out of these. You have to remember how much dollar money out of public safety they're cutting when they do that. The assessor doesn't have much money. When you cut 15% out of them, it doesn't mean as much as to the large police force. And when we talk about getting rid of patrol, only 55% of Coos County citizens live in a place with a police force right now that is not county. We have 7 cities, only 5 have police forces. So 45% of our people don't have police coverage if patrol goes away. And
do you know how much the assessor's office has in the budget each year?
Yeah, we can pull it up real quick. I know it's not going to be as much as public safety though, because I see
it
those
certainly
budgets.
isn't, but it's almost $2 million a year the assessor's office has. And I don't think they need $2 million to fulfill their obligation to the state. So I definitely think a lot of that money can be sent over to the jail, and that would go a long way towards funding at least 4 or 5, maybe even 6 jail deputies and potentially keeping pods open and criminals off our streets.
So
It's
my
nice
next
to have
question, and I believe it's Chris, it's your turn. Yeah, I think it's your turn. Yeah. And so if this doesn't pass, and it's a good deal it doesn't pass, I'm talking about the safety levy. Many people don't believe it's going to make a change, even if it does pass or whether it doesn't pass, because they believe the justice system is broken. It's been purposely broken from the top down. And my question to you, Chris, is do you think that the system has been what I call sabotaged by the legislature and the governor for whatever reasons? And even if we get a levy, it's still not going to do much about the crime that is going on in the streets of the cities and the unincorporated areas in the county?
That's certainly part of it. There are definitely state and federal issues that we're dealing with. We're also dealing with a lot of common law issues, like the court systems. They've put out all these rulings, and it's really affected the way that the police respond to crime and prosecute crime, and that's unfortunate. But no one's going to save Coos County. So no state or federal entity is going to come in here and save Coos County. So there are certain things that we can do at a county level to help us with crime. And you mentioned the broken system, and I like to tell people that it's not broken, it's fixed. It's fixed completely not in our favor. It's fixed for the liberal politics and liberal policies of Salem and at the federal level. It's fixed so that we cannot prosecute crime. I don't know why they're doing it. You could get into conspiracies over why this is happening. But essentially the Democratic left of the country has decided that lawlessness is better for America. I don't understand why. But will the levy, even if it passes, or even if I'm able to rework the budget and fund law enforcement, will it help? I think it will absolutely help at the jail level. I'm not sure about patrol. I have different ideas about how we can work at the patrol level. I think maybe some more of reserve officers, a volunteer force with the reserve officers would do better. It would be a lot less costly. But there are certainly things we can do. Funding deputy DAs will get us back on track for prosecuting cases. But there are definitely roadblocks at the state and federal level. And if they don't ever change, we're going to have to leave the union. Literally. I mean, this county is going to have to bind together with other counties, and we're going to have to come up with a new solution if our state and federal politics continue to erode America.
Drew, you want to answer that question? Do you need me to repeat it?
No, the question was what happens if it doesn't pass, essentially.
Well, if do you think that a lot of the problems that are caused with what we see as lawlessness, or if you want to call it crime happening in the streets, isn't going to be, even whether if it passes, it's not going to change anything with the justice system, because the justice system has been broken, sabotaged, or as Chris said, it's working the way it's supposed to work because of the agenda up in Salem and the governor's office. Do you think that the state has caused many of these problems that the sheriff is facing and the DA is facing right now with crime?
Yeah. Oregon's criminal justice system is just about as broken as its mental health system right now, which is catastrophic. And the two overlap quite a bit. Folks I've mentioned a few times, we have about 700 mental health beds at the state right now. We need 3,000 more. And when people are decompensated in the mental health state, that contributes to crime. The idea that it wouldn't have any effect whether or not this passes, we've seen an example. It happened while I was on council. I forget how many years ago it was at this point. You probably remember, though, when we had that rash of car thefts just over and over. Somebody got arrested 3 times in one day for grand theft auto.
Yeah.
Taken out to Coquille, stole a car to drive back, taken out again, stole another car to drive back. We had 49 beds at that time. And then somehow they found the money and bumped it back up to 98. And that ring of car thieves, that went away. That problem stopped at that time. And it escalated again after we lost some beds. So we've seen in the past where additional beds will have an impact despite how messed up our public safety and criminal justice system is in Oregon. I'll add there, though, that one of the work groups I'm on around civil commitments on mental health, I got to be the bad guy about a couple weeks ago now because I was addressing that we need to be doing something with folks that are out there on the street mentally ill with needles hanging out of their arms. They're on drugs. We need to help them. And I got chastised by one of the disability rights groups because I was discriminating against their life choice. And I think that is where we end up with a big problem, is we have advocates in other areas that have lost sight of what human dignity is. And they argue that keeping people out of these systems will improve their dignity, when on the street level, when I was a case manager, we know that if I'm going to try and get this person back into society, it is a lot easier if they have gone to the state hospital, been stabilized and returned to me, than it is if they were let to just sit and shit on the street. And now the whole community has seen them in that capacity. So yeah, we run into a problem at the state level with advocates who express the best intentions but have very poor outcomes. And I think that's something we could see more activity around and argument against.
Chris,
Could
did
I
you want to
rebuttal on
rebut that? You got it.
Sort of a rebuttal. So it's kind of a question for Drew, because I believe that this issue, as well as many others, are due to the Democratic and liberal policies at the state and federal level. I don't see Republicans defunding the police. I don't see Republicans bottlenecking our justice system. And I guess my question is, why are you supported by the Democratic Party, but you're sitting here and saying that these policies are affecting Coos County in a negative way? Like, how can you take money and support from the Democratic Party and be a leader in Coos County?
They decided to support somebody they felt would be the best candidate, even if they don't entirely agree with them, which realistically, I think the thing that's killing this country the most right now is just the two parties' inability to operate now. They've become so partisan, they cannot form a coherent thought anymore. And as a caveat, since we're having fun, I apologize I didn't put a big flag behind me. I served under it, so I don't need it.
Oh, wow. He's a lot better of a man than I am, I suppose.
Yeah. Well,
Probably not.
I'm in a tinfoil
That was a really
red
weird thing
bunker.
to say, man.
Yeah,
That was a really weird thing.
Well, like I said, I'm in a tin-foiled lead-lined bunker down here at my basement in Bandon, and so I'll go with whatever you guys put behind you. But I do. This leads me to another question, and I knew this issue was going to be one of those who expanded out, and we'd have to extrapolate on, because I think it's the lead issue in the county right now, hands down. And because it does tie into the justice system, mental illness, the homelessness that's going on. And so my question, and this would go to you, Chris Castleman, is that the cities have to pay the county a certain amount of money for their jail beds. And my question is, do you think the cities are paying their fair share of this burden, because most of the criminals come from the cities and not the unincorporated areas?
That's a tough one. I hope that everybody is paying their fair share. I know that in terms of tax, like tax revenue, that correlates to the crime. I mean, like a lot of the tax revenue comes from Coos Bay. So yes, the crime comes from there because there's a lot of properties and a lot of businesses there. So I believe that correlates with funding. It would be interesting to maybe put some statistics behind it and do a little bit of an analysis. If it is imbalanced, then sure. But it would also just simply be a good thing for the cities to do. I think Coos Bay should put aside whether they think that it's fair or not, and they should step up and say, we want to support public safety. And they can do that through funding a narcotics officer for the SINT program, or they can support the jail by funding a jail deputy or two. I mean, they do have a lot of money. They're talking about putting $38 million to renovate a library or build a new one. I mean, if you have that much potential revenue, then why not fund more public safety? I think libraries are important, but are they that much more important than public safety? I think the cities should definitely look into it, whether the county should be enforcing that or asking them for more money when they don't even know how to spend their own money properly. Then I don't know, that puts us in a weird spot.
Drew, same question.
Yeah, and largely good points. I mean, it'd be an interesting study to see the amount of crime relative to taxes paid. One of the troubles we also run into, though, when we look at where the crime is being caught, is where the police are relative to the crime occurring. So we have quite a bit of crime in the cities generally. But if you go just past American Market out near Empire and go onto county land, new people that got messed up, and it was just a block or two outside the city where they bought meth. You go out into woods on county land, you get the big drug busts, and what was the impact of those drugs on the cities once they got there? And then, as Chris brought up, do we want to give them more money? I mean, right now, not so much. If one of the two of us gets in here, I'm sure we'll look at it.
I will say that the city of North Bend is looking to, at their next meeting, increase their city manager's salary by $35,000.
It's ridiculous.
So in that instance, yeah, I would absolutely say, hey, North Bend, why don't you kick some of that money down to the sheriff's office to help fund narcotics investigations and not give it to your city manager? I mean, it's moves like that that definitely make me lean towards, hey, these cities need to step up a little more. But I don't know. I'm running for a county position, and I don't think the county can point fingers at anyone but themselves right now.
Interagency narcotics team was a good one, though. I think that would be a good place to put some money. We're in our budgeting process right now, so next Thursday we get a look at that.
So, and I guess this leads back to the tax levy overall. Is there any, and I'm starting with you, Drew, on this one, is there any other funding source besides taxes or money from the state or the state taking over any departments? Is there any money that you can think of through voluntarism, through people donating themselves? What is there anything that you would encourage people to do that or work for as a commissioner to try to get other types of funding besides just from the government and the taxpayers?
Yeah, I mean, we need to look at some of the partnerships we could be having right now. I brought up that timber opportunity that got shut down. It was available back in 2011 or so, and it came up again within the last 2 years. And both times Bob has opposed it, but it was a good opportunity to get land back from the state or from the feds without the restrictions they generally impose. Review the contract, seeing where we can get more money out of it, and then just more pushes on the legislature. I mean, I've heard people say pretty much my whole life we can't get nice things because we're rural. I think I demonstrated that to not be the case. We were able to get the governor to change one of her orders, a very, very blue governor, to change one of her orders to benefit all of rural Oregon. So there's opportunities there that are being passed up. You mentioned volunteers. When we look at the jail, you wouldn't want to open a new pod based on volunteers because it's inconsistent. But what you could do as a cost saving measure is reserve police officers can be certified sufficiently to serve in the jail. So the reserve program does have a cost. A possible manageable push for citizens would be to get involved with their local reserve police departments, ask how they can do fundraising for the equipment the volunteers need, because that is an expense. And through that mechanism, and then also people who are willing to step up to the challenge. I think that's another big one, is a lot of us talk, but moving up to what we're talking about is a big deal.
Chris, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I think people can volunteer, and I mean, with their own money. I think that right now, the biggest argument that people shout back at me when I say that I don't support the levy is, well, then you obviously don't support public safety. And they say that, you know, if the levy fails, it's because the majority of the county doesn't feel that the public safety is important. And I think that's bullshit. And I would throw it back at them and I'd say, look, if you find public safety important enough to take more money out of your budget, your own personal budget, and spend it on public safety, then go ahead and do it. They can voluntarily send that money to the sheriff's office. I would even go so far as to propose a public safety levy that is only for public safety, not like this one because they're using it to fund other departments, but specifically for, it would go directly to the sheriff's office and the DA. And what it would do is it would show up on your property tax bill, but you would also get a separate sheet that allows you to opt out. You can sign your name and write a little excuse or reason why you don't want to send money for the public safety levy. And if you fill that out, you'll get a little discount on your property tax bill. And then everybody else who wants to spend more money and fund public safety and give it to the county so that they can use the money inappropriately, that they can do that. They can fund public safety through a property tax increase that they agree to. And it won't affect other people who don't agree to it. So I don't know if I explained that properly, but essentially, if you want to spend the money, go ahead. And if you don't want it on your property tax bill, you wouldn't have to pay the money. And then that would give people the proper option to fund it. And maybe they get the money they need. I mean, if these people support it enough that they want to take it out of my pocket too, I think they should take it out of their pocket first. And I think it's bullshit that they throw that at us if we don't support the levy.
Drew, you're up on that question.
Run by me again.
Answered it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't. I thought you did too. Never mind. I don't know. Sorry. I've been drinking tonight. It happens. So let's go to the both of you had proposed an emergency, a state of or an emergency situation. It's
Declaration of emergency.
Declaration. That was the word I was looking for. Both of you have actually proposed this, and I was at the meetings where both of you proposed your ideas on a declaration. Chris, let's see. Did I start with Drew last time? So Chris, yes. I want to start with you. Tell us what your emergency declaration would do and how that would benefit the county, and then we'll have Drew talk about his.
So I crafted an emergency declaration, and it was crafted based on the COVID emergency declaration that the county did in 2020. It was almost word for word. I pretty much just swapped out COVID for crime. You know, there's an obvious crime epidemic and it's affecting everybody and it's only going to get worse. And it's a big problem. So I crafted that declaration. It was a couple pages long. I sent it over to the commissioners. And essentially what I was told is it doesn't work. It's not something they're willing to do, which is very interesting because they were willing to do it with COVID. They were willing to infringe on our personal liberties and shut things down and move around county budgets and things like that. But they're not able to do it for crime, apparently. So it was unfortunate. But I will note that I did that before I was even elected. I'm not elected. I might never be elected. And I was able to, as a citizen, propose that and craft it. Unfortunately, no one took it up. No one at the county level took it up, but no one at the city level took it up either. No one in Coos Bay, no one in North Bend took up that emergency declaration. What Drew Farmer did is he took a fentanyl emergency declaration and he got it passed through at Coos Bay. I wish it had some teeth, but it doesn't. I wish we could solve the fentanyl crisis with an emergency declaration. I don't think we can. And I obviously, by looking at the past couple months since that declaration has been passed in Coos Bay, it hasn't done anything. I asked them if they even have any metrics that they can point to show how bad the problem is and how we're going to get it better. I mean, let's say there's X amount of overdoses every day currently. Well, what level is acceptable? Are we hoping to get to a point where we don't see any overdoses at any day? I mean, there's just no metrics behind that emergency, and that was unfortunate. But what did my emergency declaration do? It allowed the county to move funds around. It allowed them to it allowed them to potentially infringe a curfew, which is a little scary, but there are certain areas of say, Empire and Coos Bay that could really use a curfew. And maybe it's between the hours of 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. or something, but they can craft it in a way that allows these areas of high crime during high times of crime to make sure that everybody is off the streets and not causing problems. Just last night, we had a guy in our neighborhood running down the street with a shopping cart full of groceries that he obviously stole the cart from Safeway. I'm not sure if he paid for the groceries or not, but he's running down the street and he shoved this cart in front of a car and it damaged the car pretty heavily. And he didn't even get charged with criminal mischief or anything. So these sorts of things need to stop. And that's a super petty one. It can go all the way up to, like Drew mentioned, there's people who steal cars on the repeat and they're getting bounced from jail and really seeing no charges. So there's an obvious problem, and an emergency declaration can make waves. It also allowed the sheriff to use volunteers and reserves in a more efficient way, for instance, to use them at the jail. But yeah, I'll just say this about the fentanyl thing that Drew got passed with the city of Coos Bay. I mean, Drew, why did it take you 7 years on the city council to propose that? That fentanyl crisis has been brewing, as you said, since you were in high school. So why would you wait 7 years to propose that?
So we've used different mechanisms over the years. Obviously, when Measure 110, prior to it, we were using our funding for the Interagency Narcotics Team, and that's generally what we've looked for. Neither of our emergency declarations would have been solutions in the long term. And yeah, infringing upon people's civil liberties through curfew that's a bit much. The fentanyl emergency order, that one came about because I saw an opportunity after the governor had directed Portland, Multnomah, and Office of Emergency Management, some others passed an emergency order, and they gave a shopping list of things that those agencies would receive in exchange for passing it. So the reason it became good at this time is there was an example out there of something that we knew was going to be approved and we could poach it. and get it for ourselves instead of it being hoarded by Metro. The intended outcome was that the county would follow suit. They asserted to me the same thing they asserted to Chris, that they can't do it. Of course, with the use of reserve police officers, they also asserted in Chris's proposal that they couldn't do that either. They said their insurance wouldn't let them. I don't know why they didn't talk to me. I'm on the board for their insurance, so I got them the information to show them where they could actually do that component of Chris's proposal, and it doesn't even need an emergency order. You can do that regardless. So that's an option. The reason they haven't moved forward with it is the same reason really. We don't think Bob is moving on it. He would have to do some of the legwork. A lot of it has been shuffled on, and it's, I think, frustrated the sheriff and the DA. They've noted that under how an emergency order works, generally you have to repay what the expense is incurred. So if they gave us police, common logic is that we would have to pay for those police. I've kind of dropped this issue at this point because I don't have the time to keep pushing on this when it should be Bob's job, and I still have a day job. But I did check with the advisor to the director of the Office of Emergency Management, and so far they have had no conversations about Portland having to repay for anything they receive. So I would think we can also not have to pay for those things if we were to receive them. But sheriff's busy, DA's busy. Bob would need to do his part of it, and he's not going to do it. So there we have it.
You want to rebut on that, Chris?
I'll just add that as a pledge to the people, this is regardless of whether I win or lose, I'm going to keep fighting this battle for this emergency, the crime emergency in Coos County. It doesn't just end whether I get elected or not. It needs every one of us to stand up. Even if I was elected, I'm going to need people to come into meetings and to stand up. We're going to have to push city officials to start pitching in to really crack down on crime, also to crack down on drugs. We're probably going to eventually have to push it up to the state level, and I can't do that alone. So yeah, I just want to put a shout out to all the people out there who might be watching. This doesn't end with a Coos County commissioner election. One way or another, we have to keep pushing. We cannot forget that this is a problem. We cannot ignore it for 7 more years. We cannot ignore it any longer. We have to just accept, or we have to make the decision that this is not acceptable. I've made that decision in my heart already. I speak at every single commissioners meeting on this crisis. I tell them that it's not acceptable, and I ask them to join me in that battle because we need to fight it.
You want to say anything, Drew?
We are going to need people and support on some of these things, but I got a governor's order changed without needing a crowd behind me. I just worked with the legislator and used the tools that are available because I know how to use the tools that are available. I've been serving the community since I went in at 19, got back here. Yeah, since 2016 for free, no expense. Nobody pays me for my city stuff. So I'll be fighting on their way.
So, and Chris, you just pretty much answered this question, but both of you, in many ways, both of you kind of remind me of me when I was your age and even younger, when I've always been an activist. I always will be an activist, and I've always been involved some portion of doing something, working on something, on some issue. And whether you win or lose, you intend on continuing advocating for certain things and continuing fighting in your community, whether you win or lose. You're not going to just walk away. This is something that's going to continue. And Drew, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, no, this is my home. I'm from here. I don't intend to leave again unless I have to. I haven't decided actually if I'll stay on city council. Well, actually, if I take over 50% in the primary, it's pretty safe to expect to get it in November. If we're going to do a runoff of all 3 of us till November, I'm only going to run for commissioner. So one way or the other, my seat's probably going to be open, so I'll should open up some time for my side projects. One of them is around mental health. It's an initiative that I've tentatively called Is This Dignity? The big pushback I get at the state level talking about getting people into care and having them at the state hospital is that we're infringing on their dignity when we do it. So that would be more of a photojournalism mechanism, documenting what these folks are experiencing when they're not receiving that care and raising the question to the legislature. Is this really what you think is dignity? And to the advocacy groups that cause this to happen. Is this what you think dignity is? And then I've got another side project right now that I've been working on, trying to restart the domestic ready reserve. World's getting kind of weird out there, so I've got to look at what we might do serving this county, but outside this county. So about a month ago, I put in my paperwork to try and get back in on the reserve side. Medical disqual. So the Domestic Ready Reserve was a program that existed in the past that allowed veterans with disabilities to get back into service in limited capacities. So that's something that's sitting with the House Committee on Veterans Affairs in DC right now, and it's one of the other things taking up time. But yeah, I've got plenty of other projects I'll still work on. Some of the nonprofits here have asked me to step in here and there.
Chris, you kind of answered it, but go ahead and fill in if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important if something's passionate to you, you got to continue with it. And that's what got me to run, because I can only do so much as a citizen. I can only do so much with a group of citizens. And unfortunately, in terms of the county budget, that's why I stepped in and decided to run, because that's the only thing, that's the only way to affect the county budget and the funds that are being spent. But all the other things, advocating to solve the crime crisis, is stuff that I can do it, whether or not I'm on the commission or not. But the other thing we can do is vote. I truly believe that this country needs to go more conservative. It needs to be less liberal, especially the state of Oregon. So I constantly vote for Republicans and conservatives to be in public office, whether it's at the county, state, or federal level. I guess, Drew, you talk a lot about that you kind of work with both sides, but you're endorsed by the Democratic Party. I mean, yeah. I voted for Trump in the past 2 presidential elections. I voted straight Republican my whole life. I lean a little libertarian, but I've decided that it's a 2-party choice at this moment. So I vote Republican. I mean, who did you vote for in the past 2 presidential elections? Like, are you helping this country become more liberal or more conservative?
I don't like either of the parties. I think they're train wrecks. So let's see, this last one, I actually voted for Pete Buttigieg. I wanted somebody that I thought could actually do the job. Folks tell me that's wasting your vote, but to me, you're wasting your vote when you let yourself be forced to vote for inadequacy. So I didn't vote for either of those on that one, and I don't recall who I voted for in 2016, but it wasn't either of the main candidates then either. I've always voted a mix. It's like I voted Dick Anderson for the Senate district for this. I actually voted against Boomer. I've been pleasantly surprised. There was a Republican treasurer I voted for the other time. This time's going to be a mix as well. I think one of my big deciding factors this time is going to be veterans, honestly. I mean, 17% of the Congress right now is veterans. In the 70s, it was 70%. And right now, looking at the state of the world, looking at how close we probably are to the next Great War, it is time for us to have people that understand what the hell that means.
But Pete Buttigieg is not on the going to be on the election in November. So, like, I'm going to vote for Trump because I think he's going to bring our country back to where it needs to be. I mean, are you going to vote for Biden or Trump? Because it's really just an option between the two of them. I mean, in terms of reality, it's going to be between Biden and Trump.
Well, there is Kennedy. You've got the Green Party candidates. You've got the Libertarian candidates. I doubt any 3 of those will win, but I think it's a valid question, Drew.
Yeah. You remember that South Park episode about that election series?
A douchebag and a shit sandwich, yes.
Yeah, I don't want either. So I'm not going to vote for either of those. November is a long ways away for those 2 men. I'm hoping for the best.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, right?
All right. So one of the things that you have already touched on, Drew Farmer, and I think I'm back at Chris again. Am I Chris again? Boy, that last one kind of went back and forth. So Chris, Drew had mentioned the wagon road lands, but there is, and I'll get to that question next, but the O&C lands, they've been fighting over this for 70 years, the ONC land, and the actual law goes back to 1939, I believe, or it's 1937. I can't remember which, when they created it was 1939, the ONC Act. And one of the things that we've been fighting for is to get more taxes for our county. During the Obama administration, he had taken part of the Siskiyou National Wildlife Refuge and or monument. It was actually the Siskiyou Monument, National Monument, and given that monument, added more of the ONC lands to that monument, and that was part of the court case that was going up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just recently kicked it back to the lower courts, and so my question to you is, what are you going to do with the ONC lands? How do you plan on tackling that problem, that issue, to try to get what is justly owed to the county from the feds?
So because this is a commissioner candidate forum, I'll answer first as that. So as a commissioner, I don't think there's anything they can do. I mean, they've proven that. There's nothing they can do at this point. Not one commissioner can do it. Now, if they all band together, maybe they could do something. Maybe out of all the counties that are in the ONC, they could come up with a leader who's passionate enough about it and can create some change. But Bob Main obviously hasn't done it. He's been passionate about it, but he hasn't been able to make any progress. And I think that's just indicative of the whole situation. I think it's pretty bad that Biden and Obama, they did this a lot all around the country. They took, it was a land grab. They took land from all around the country, from different states, and they turned them into national monuments and stole that land and to preserve it. And I'm all about the parks. I love the parks. I love preserving things. But when you fuck with local politics by doing that, it's not good. You can't do that. But I also trust our Supreme Court right now. I don't agree with every single decision they've made, but I trust the makeup of that Supreme Court right now. I think they're a group of very smart individuals. And if they chose not to see that case or hear that case, then there's probably reason for it. And I just think it's a lost cause for the county to continually try and rely on that money that has not come in for a long time and will probably at some point completely dry up. Right now, I think we're getting 3 or 4 million a year from that. And I just don't understand why we keep relying on it when it's obviously not going to be given to us forever. And if Bob is very passionate about it, which he claims he is, then he can continue that in his retirement. He'll have lots of time to focus on fighting that battle. And if he cares about Coos County enough, he'll keep fighting it.
Drew, you want to answer?
Cool. Yeah, the ONC lands in the Wagon Road. I think it was the attorney for the Coquel tribe did a public records request recently, and it came out that something like $750,000 has been spent by the county in the pursuit of these two things. Yeah, I know,
Yes.
right? Neither one
Wow.
has. Yeah, it hurt to read.
That's very interesting how much money they spent on attorneys for this, but I understand, that's
I understand
I'll
why.
ask you that question afterwards. Yeah, why? Answer why that might be justified, as well as the answer to the question I gave you.
Yeah, so the old wagon roads, we touched on that. I've mentioned a few times. They had the opportunity to get it back by partnering with the Coquel tribe. They could have done it over a decade ago, and we could have been raking in the money this entire time instead of being where we're sitting and having wasted so much money on that process. And I think that's one of the leverage points that hasn't been utilized sufficiently, is we have two sovereign nations here who can bypass certain federal regulations. Some of these things they're trying to overturn in these already don't apply to some of our partners here. We can bypass that just through effective partnership. And in talking with both tribes, they don't have essentially any partnership at the county level.
These are two separate lands, though. One, the Wagon Train Road was a 1937 act, and the ONC land was a 1939 act. I'm talking about the ONC land. I've never seen any suggestion that the county split with the Indians on any management of the ONC lands.
ONC land, I might have. Yeah, I was blending the two because both were involved in the cost of the attorney funds. The ONC land, though, yeah, that failed at the Supreme Court, and I think they're banging their head against the wall on that one, unless they find, because if I remember right with that one, they were trying to bypass some environmental regulations, right?
For the ONC or the Wagon Train Road?
ONC.
ONC, yeah, they've stopped harvesting the forest, and because of environmental impacts was part of the reason. Yes.
Yeah. So some of those environmental impacts that are being applied there causing that restriction don't apply when the tribe's involved. So while they haven't had a conversation around the ONC lands related to the tribe partnering, it is an opportunity where you could skip the whole thing essentially. And then the third thing they had was the forest trust lands for $1.1 billion that Oregon owes us across 13 timber counties. That's held up at the Oregon Supreme Court. That's one I think where Chris would have a strong approach there, is just through the preponderance of individuals showing up and pushing on it. There has to be pressure executed. With relation to the Supreme Court's, unless they start having some transparency, those entities at large cause me concern. But generally, I don't like to deal with feds. I tell folks our state's perfectly capable of screwing stuff up, whatever it's handed, so I don't deal with feds too much. I try and fix things county and state right now.
Chris, you want to rebuttal on that?
Not really. I mean, I could answer the wagon road thing.
Well, that's going to be my next question. So
go ahead.
All right. So on the Wagon Road, you have offered the idea of splitting management with the Indian tribe, and that's controversial in itself. And a lot of people are opposed to that. So do you think that that's something, because it is so controversial, that should be put out to the voters and let the voters decide whether they want to partner with the Indian tribes? Because as a sovereign nation, there are things they can do to maneuver around the county. And some of those contracts are not as, they're more applicable to the Indian tribe because they are considered a sovereign nation than the county, which is considered an entity of the state. So don't you think that that should be put out to the voters?
Which one of us first?
Drew, answer
that. Yeah, that should go out to the voters. We would need to go through the process of ensuring the contract is watertight. Because that's what business is. It's contracts. Operated under a lot of them. They can bite you in the ass if you don't do them right. And it would be a decision to go out to the people. I think a sufficient argument could be made for it that it would get enough support as long as the contract is drafted properly. And that'll really be the trick.
Chris, you want to answer that?
Sure. I'm not even totally sure. The Wagon Road, is this the county forest lands that?
No, this is the Wagon Road lands. The Wagon Road lands is federal lands that they bought back from private individual under the agreement that they would pay part of the timber harvest that they pulled off of the Wagon Road to the county. And it's also another, I believe, $3 to $6 million, depending on how big the harvest is, that the county would be getting from this. And the county has twice now, and just not too long ago, I think it was just a year ago, they had approached the Indian tribe because the Indian tribe, as a sovereign nation, has special rights, special privileges that other people don't. And because a lot of the county doesn't want to share equally with the tribe because they're much smaller than the county as far as population. And they also believe that it's not fair that they get granted certain rights or privileges, whatever you want to call them, to be able to manage forest without having to worry about the environmental restrictions. So my question to you is, do you think that if this county wants to partner with the Indian tribe, do you think that question should go out to the voters since it's such a controversial issue?
I mean, yeah, any issue that's controversial for sure. I mean, at the very least, we should be having town hall meetings. We should be collecting as much public input as possible. It could even go out on a vote. I know sometimes that costs extra money to put votes on a ballot and things like that, but or to do special voting elections, so it might have to wait. But transparency is always better. Public input is much better. Rod Taylor has been instrumental in that at the county level. If you go to the county meetings, they allow you to interact on almost every single agenda item. They allow you to interact at the end during public comment, and it's a back and forth. It's not just a straight up 3 minutes and you're done. So certainly we should get public input. I'm not particularly sure about all the specifics with the Coquel Indian tribe and the Wagon Road lands. But if you have the right mindset about involving the public in processes that the government can handle, then sure, absolutely, you can come to some sort of agreement that everyone feels is fair and necessary.
Drew, did you want to rebuttal on that or anything?
No, transparency is key. Oregon is one of the most transparent states in the nation. We're actually the only state that allows the press into our executive sessions.
Yeah, we'll save that for another show, another debate. So we've got another project, and this is why I grouped them all together: the Coos Bay, Wagon Road, the ONC lands, and now another federal project by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is trying to bring in those windmills, put them off 13 miles off the coast of Coos Bay, which actually it's kind of Coos Bay and Reedsport is where it would be, off the coast of Coos Bay and Reedsport, and another one down by Brookings. And so eventually the question, and by the way, there's a 60-day public comment period that just opened up about the leases that they're getting ready to put up or put out there for bids. And so my question to you is, do you have any ideas of how you would try to stop it, or are you in favor of it? And what would you do to either encourage it or discourage it? And I'm going to go to Chris first.
So I've heard both sides of this issue. It doesn't seem like the majority supports the windmills, the majority in the county. It seems like they're opposed to it. People in the fishing industry, even some people in the environmental industry that don't agree with the windmills being put up. They feel like it's going to be disastrous. I also don't totally understand why at the federal and state level we're getting rid of energy alternatives like hydro and putting up windmills instead. Why are we closing down dams to save fish, and then we're going to go put windmills out in the ocean and destroy fish? I don't quite understand that. I haven't understood why we bailed out on nuclear energy. They know how to do it in a safe, efficient way and create a lot of power. And I don't know why we're not doing nuclear energy. The windmill thing just doesn't make sense. The majority of Coos County is against it. So I don't think the federal government should go and put those offshore. And I don't think the power is going to come to Coos County either. From what I've heard, the power is not even going to be given to us that it generates. So,
Drew?
Not a trusting person on that project. My understanding is the same. The energy wouldn't be coming to Oregon. It would be rerouted south. I know one of the commissioners has proposed how they could stop the project would be to not allow them to make landfall here with the power cord, essentially, that they can just redirect it farther south. I've heard a lot against, and then more recently, I'm starting to hear a bunch of people for. I wouldn't presume to have heard from the majority of the county. There's 64,000 of us. I like to see what people can bring me. So I try to have nothing be a flat no. Nothing's a guarantee. It has to be demonstrated that it's worth doing. So I don't think they're able to do it, but they would have to show me that it's not going to interfere with search and rescue operations for the Coast Guard. It's not going to interfere with the naval assets that they've already had to redirect around because they didn't check. I don't want it to interfere with our fishing industry, which means that whatever they're running under there needs to not interfere with the migration of our fish. I damn sure don't want any other blades buried here. And they would have to show a whole lot of money that would support this county and help the people here. It wouldn't create a lot of permanent jobs. It just doesn't have many pros. So unless they could just about nullify every con, I can't see why we would want it to go through.
Chris, did you want to rebut on that, or are you good? All right. We're switching gears here. Another subject, and it's kind of, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on procedures in the county meetings. And one of the things that Commissioner Rod Taylor did when he first became commissioner was propose to have prayer opening up or at the beginning of every county meeting. A lot of people, there were people for and against it who were at this meeting. And my question to Drew, you're the first one to answer this. Now they've got a moment of silence. Do you think that this county should continue with the moment of silence, or do you think they should have a prayer, or do you think they should just start the meeting and go on with business? What's your, of those three decisions, where are you at with that?
Generally, I would say you're there to do business, do business. I don't like to waste my time on the moment of silence. They do it in meetings across the board, though. I don't know that folks notice that, but some of the state meetings I'm in, they do it on the liberal ones, they do it on the conservative ones. Everybody does it for a different reason. And it's a boring waste of my time. I would rather be working. The prayer aspect is, in my humble opinion, a pharisaical act. I don't know why anyone would be supporting that. That's, yeah. Do folks know what the Pharisees were?
Yeah. I mean, are we going to start a catechism class next?
I was in a seminary at one point. A lot of folks don't
I
know
knew
that.
you were. I knew you were. Yeah. Chris, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I guess just to clarify Drew's position. So did you feel that he was kind of pushing his personal Catholic or Christian beliefs on the public, kind of using his position to push these personal things that are personal to him on the public?
Yeah, I would say two things. One is that, trying to impose it upon others, but the other is something he got called out for in a town hall in Myrtle Point as well, as he was using religion as something to build up his character to others. He's using it as a tool instead of as a belief. And that's where the Pharisees and the Pharisaical act comes into play.
Okay, kind of like I support Christianity and that makes me look better.
Yeah, when he was at that meeting and said, "I'm telling the truth because I follow Jesus," and somebody gave a small sermon about why that was stupid to say.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I disagreed with it. It tactfully was terrible. I don't believe that you should push, personal things like that on the public. You shouldn't use your position to do that. I think that you should always look at what you can do before some sort of legislation or act or ordinance. And what he could have done is he could have gotten a group of people prior to the meeting, 5 minutes before every meeting. You can huddle together and have a prayer. I know there's coaches that coach football that got in trouble for doing that. I don't know why they would get in trouble, but before the game or after the game, they circled around at half field and they said a prayer. So anyone who feels that prayer is important can absolutely do that before the meeting. I think that would be even more symbolic if you all got together outside and just bless the building and bless the meeting for the day. That would be cool. I don't have any problem with that. I definitely have a problem with it being enforced on us. And the moment of silence is essentially just in place because it was a compromise. But I'm going to throw this back at Drew, because the irony, the hypocrisy is weird to me, because you were instrumental in for about 2 years there at City Council getting the pride flag flown over the boardwalk. And that's a lot. That was something that a lot of people disagreed with. They felt like you were using your position to enforce your beliefs on people and fly it over Coos Bay instead of doing what you could have been doing to address the fentanyl crisis and other things at the moment. It was in the midst of COVID. There were other more important things, and you were kind of focusing on pushing this pride flag agenda. You even, the ordinance that you proposed and got passed was so that you as a city council could choose any flag you wanted, and that you could specifically deny flags that other people wanted. So it was very exclusive of the public and only inclusive of beliefs that you held close to you. And I see those as very similar to what Rod Taylor did. And I didn't really appreciate that you were pushing those beliefs on the public.
Drew, you want to respond?
Sure. So I was actually on Rob's show after I did that one. It was an opportunity in a recognized period of time. I don't remember if it's a federal month designated, but it was an opportunity to support a population that has an abnormally high rate of suicide. That's why I did it. There were other boards and committees and projects I was working on, I think at that time. Rob, do you remember when that was? Was that 21?
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago now. I think it's been, I think it was in 21. And I was going to get to that in another question, but it's
that would have been the time frame that in my day job we were picking up the loss of supported employment for people with disabilities, helping homeless folks get back on their feet through work. I forget which boards and committees I was serving on. I think I got on the mental health one at that time, so that we could push back on state policies. I know in that time frame I worked with Boomer Wright on 2 pieces of mental health legislation so that we could hold people for 3 days so they could be stabilized and render informed consent around their care. So that one item didn't take a substantial amount of time or detract from my ability to pursue the other issues.
It's attracted a lot of energy from the public. It caused quite a stir. It redirected a lot of energy. It was a very divisive moment. You talk a lot about being independent and not conservative or liberal. And you talk about how that has caused problems in our federal level, that people don't work together. And it was a very divisive moment for Coos County. So I get it. You have personal reasons why you thought it was important, but it just wasn't something that you needed to push on people. And I applaud Rob for the effort you pushed to get that policy destroyed and taken out, because we don't need a policy where our city council can decide to fly flags and not other flags. And it's just really stupid and petty. And it was obviously only used in order to push your own personal agenda. It wasn't about flying flags that are important. It was about flying flags that were something that you thought were important.
Yeah, it was to support a population that kills themselves was why it was important to me. And
suicide affects everyone.
It hasn't stopped me so far to work with Republicans yet. I even went to the Republican monthly meeting last month, took the initiative and went there. And spoke to them. They invited me to talk to them. That was cool.
Yeah, but you won't vote for Republicans at our state or federal level. You'll decline to vote. Okay.
I don't vote for the shitty presidential of candidates, but I do vote for Republicans and Democrats mixed.
Chris, let's go ahead and expand upon this. Chris, you had an experience with that same meeting that the Republicans had just, I don't think, maybe it was last Thursday or the Thursday before last. It's every third Thursday of the month. You tried to get into that meeting. Would you please tell us what had happened with that?
Yeah, originally I was invited to that meeting by some people that work for the Republican Party. And then it came to the day of, and they kind of suggested that I am not allowed to be there, and I don't want to go to a place where I'm not welcome. I believe they're trying to support Bob and Drew, but I think they have something with Bob, some sort of gripe. I don't know what it is. It's really dumb. The Republican Party needs to support Republicans, and the two Republicans in this race are Bob and me, and I would obviously want them to support me over Bob. But the fact of the matter is they had a Republican Party meeting talking about the commissioner race, and they invited the Democrat opponent as like a pseudo endorsement. It's very strange. You're going to applaud yourself, Drew, for
No, I'm just laughing at the irony here that I'm a terrible liberal, but the Republicans brought me in.
Sure. So you're going to say that, that shows that you're a better candidate because you're able to work with both parties, but it has really little to do with you, Drew, and it has a lot to do with the dysfunction in our Republican Party, because we've been supporting rhinos, which is Republican in name only, and then we've been supporting Democrats. I mean, apparently, I don't understand it.
I'm not a Democrat, though.
Okay. Sure, but like on the social media, we just see ad after ad that it's Drew Farmer supported by the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is running your campaign. They're supporting your campaign financially. They're supporting it with in-person support, like the rally at the boardwalk. You're fully supported by the Democratic Party. You're running as their candidate. I don't think they're going to appreciate you saying that you don't support them. I think they want you. It's going to come with strings attached. That money does not come for free. They're going to want you to support liberal policies in Coos County. And I think you're being really disingenuous when you tell people that you're not working for the Democratic Party.
They know better than to think I'm going to go with strings. They're voting for me because I'm the better candidate.
Drew, let me ask you, and I'll ask Chris this just so we're clear here. Drew, what are you registered now as in this county?
Non-affiliated.
And Chris, you are registered a Republican, correct?
I'm not sure. It's either Republican or Libertarian. I'm not totally positive. But I have voted straight Republican my entire life, every single race. It's never been more than a two-party issue in any race. I would hope that someday a third party, whether it's the Libertarian Party or some other party, takes over. That would be really cool. I'm actually hopeful to be part of that in my lifetime, but we're not going to do that through voting. We're going to destroy this country by voting for third party candidates, because it will always allow the liberals to gain the lead. And those are the policies that are destroying America, our liberal policies. That's what's destroying our country.
Drew, you want anything to say with that?
I just had an interesting piece of trivia pop into my mind because I was curious what it would look like one time. If you were to remove only what is considered Portland Metro from Oregon, then the 2020 election would have shifted from being 70% for Biden to 58% for Trump. It was just an interesting highlight of how the political division of Oregon is.
All righty. I want to get back to the pride flag since we went there. And there is someone who just he made a statement, and I'm going to show you the two statements that was made. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Alexia. I'm not sure. Alexa. I'm not sure. But the first thing it says is that, yep, I was instructed to put that flag up at the time. He's talking about the pride flag. And then he goes on to say that it's the reason I resigned from the city of Coos Bay.
Oh, wow.
Could you see why an atheist might resign from the county if they're forced to recite a prayer or told that they have to sit through a prayer, recital at the county meeting. It would be the same thing if someone was told that they had to put up a pride flag. Can you see kind of the resemblance of that argument or a similarity in that argument?
I can see a resemblance. It's different in at least in my mind. If somebody wanted to compel me to do some kind of attestation of faith to something I didn't believe, whereas I needed to do my job and hang something, those are different to me. But I can see where somebody could have that conflict. Yeah.
Chris, you want to respond to that?
I mean, that's sad. I don't know this person that wrote this comment, but I would imagine that they were doing a good job for the city, and to see them resign over that is exactly what I was talking about by it being divisive. It was completely unnecessary, completely unnecessary. You can show your support for the pride community or whatever that is without doing it at a city level. It's just completely unnecessary. And the flag thing, what I think the pride flag stands for, all those acronyms like LGBTQ plus SL, like there's all these different, it's like 9 of them now. They keep adding on. There's one called Two Spirit. I don't know what the fuck that means. It's essentially this group that represents everyone but straight people. So I don't really understand how it's inclusive, because it excludes a segment of America that is valued. And when you put the pride flag up, you're excluding people. It's the same thing if you were to fly a Black Lives Matter flag. Great, Black Lives Matter, white lives matter, all lives matter. It's so stupid and divisive to continue these policies where we fly flags and recite chants and things like Black Lives Matter. Okay, great. It doesn't belong in politics. It doesn't really belong anywhere, because it seeks to divide this nation, and we need to come together for a better America and a better future. This pandering is just what's destroying our country. Pandering to pride flags and to Black Lives Matter is not helpful at all. And look, that text that he put up on the screen shows that it affects real people. I mean, what you did, Drew, affected other people in a negative way. And it doesn't matter if you did it with the best of intentions, but it took a lot of time and energy away from a government that needs to focus on crime, preventing crime and preventing fentanyl use and all these things that are important to the residents. The pride flag stuff is not important to Coos County.
Yeah, I wish I would have heard from him. Oh, I just wish I would have heard from the fella. I assume fella, I suppose. Yeah, that outcome didn't come to us, or at least it didn't come to me. But yeah, the decision ended up going through the attorney, and it's not a thing that can be done anymore. So it just won't come up again.
So here's my question then, and I'll start with you, Drew. And I'll let everyone know I did have a dog in the fight. I was the one who showed up with a Christian flag and asked that to be flown along with several other flags with the pride flag. And I was told that only the city council had a right to their First Amendment rights, and that this wasn't a public arena, yet you and the other city councilors were allowed the right of expressing yourself by choosing the flags. And so I had gotten a group that's behind me. I still have them behind me who are willing to fight this in a court of law. And it could have cost the city quite a bit of money to do this fight. And I've understand that the policy has changed, but you're still under a moratorium. Are you planning on eliminating that moratorium and exposing the city to a legal battle? Is that something you'd be willing to do to risk on this issue?
No, that's why we dropped it at the time. We didn't need to get into a legal battle. Somebody had already done it for us. We got the material and we cut that loose, because that's, like I've mentioned before, public entities, they're legal entities. You can propose things like active rebellion and these things, but it's better done outside of government. In this case, yeah, no, I don't intend to bring it back. I had actually proposed removing it entirely because I felt that the moratorium was a token gesture. And then with the Christian flag, well, the First Amendment aspect, the way it had gone through the first piece of case law that the attorney had looked at was that as the representatives of the people being elected, we would act with that. And if we weren't acting in that, you do the same thing folks always do. They need to recall us, which I told somebody who told me, 98% of Coos Bay didn't agree with me. Hey, recall me. Nobody ever did. Nobody tried. But if I'm ever 98% wrong, I would hope to God somebody tries to recall me. Because at that point, the cheese slipped off my cracker. That's not good.
Chris.
Oh, and we had some pastors and such at that meeting that asked us not to fly the Christian flag. So it got mixed results.
Chris, you want to respond to that?
I mean, I honestly don't want to spend any more time on it. It was such a stupid distraction and unnecessary, and I hope it never happens again. I did watch the meeting online, and that when they decided to do the moratorium, and it was more because they were afraid of getting sued. Joe Benetti, the mayor, specifically talked about how they still wanted to do it, but they realized that it would come at a significant cost to the city of Coos Bay because of lawsuits, and that's why they chose not to, which is the most cowardice thing to do. I mean, if you thought it was so important, then you should fight it till the end. I mean, I don't want to spend taxpayers' money that way either, but again, it was just a stupid distraction and a waste of time, and it was pandering and just not necessary.
All right. I'm going to go. Drew, did you want to respond to that? I'll give you a chance if you want.
Oh, yeah, just the money aspect. Yeah, when you get into government, you also have other oaths you take. One is to be a fiduciary. You have a fiduciary responsibility to the entity you're representing. So separate from how much you may want to run after something, if you're going to end up costing the entity you're representing a ton of money, it's not a thing to do. You may have your own fight to fight in it, but you don't push the entities to do it on your behalf because you need to preserve their funds. So yeah, that is the logical outcome. If there's a huge liability exposure and cost, you don't carry on down that road because that's part of the oath you took.
And that liability and exposure was brought about by a choice that you made to put pride flag into Coos County politics.
It was easily removed.
So one of the people who is on who just made a comment, he says, talking about the flag being flown years ago seems like a waste of time. We need to talk about the future. Please address Jeremy Miller's question, and I'll get to Jeremy Miller's question. But the reason I asked the question about the flag policy is, Drew, do you intend to bring that flag policy up to the county? And that's why it would be relevant to the election and the situation today.
No, we already got the case law that's not a viable option, so that's not something I'm going to pursue.
Chris, are you?
Hell no. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I mean, I would just say to Drew, I mean, if it was so important for you, why aren't you wearing a pride flag t-shirt right now? I mean, why don't you wear one at every city council meeting? It was just so stupid, but whatever. I think we absolutely need to move on.
I
Okay.
consider that virtue signaling is why I don't do things like that and put big flags behind me and such.
I agree. It was virtue signaling. We can agree on that. There you go.
I've got a question from Jeremy Miller. That was the one that Leo Strauss was asking. And he says, questions for both candidates. In your opinion, how important is it to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, in Coos County? And I'll add on to that, as Coos County Commissioner, are you going to impose those types of policy on the commission and hiring especially? And I'll start with Chris. Your go.
It's the same thing with the pride flag. I mean, all that stuff is a distraction. The diversity, equity, all those conversations are stupid. We have absolute crises on our hands. We have crime. drugs in our community, and it's plaguing every single one of us. So these other issues are non-issues. They're not things that we need in county politics. We don't need to be wasting our time on them. Absolutely not. I don't think they belong in our schools, those programs that try and push agendas on children when they're at their most vulnerable, when they're still growing their minds and forming their opinion of society. I mean, we don't need to push these things on people if they don't want it. And Coos County doesn't want it. You can do any sort of polling in the county. They don't want these programs, and I would do absolutely everything to stop it, whether or not I'm elected. If I wasn't around for the pride flag fight, but if I was, I mean, I was present here. I just wasn't involved in politics. I didn't really, the only time I heard about the pride flag was when it was up, and I honestly was going to go take it down. I mean, that was going to be my involvement. But anyways, the DEI stuff needs to end. We need to stop being divisive, and it needs to end.
Drew, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, an annual training is a healthy thing. It's knowledge. It shows us how there have been oppressive moments in the past, and it informs what we can look out for in the future, whether or not it's the same demographic or not. It's been pretty standard in my line of work in the past, is you have a training each year around it. There are people that specialize in that know more about it than me. In terms of hiring, I'm not sure how much that plays a role outside of what you're required to do by labor laws. I mean, if you were to impose something outside of labor laws, I think you'd find yourself in just as much trouble. So I don't think that would be a factor outside of what you do by law when you're hiring people, and that's what HR managers are for. But a training once a year on what it is and things to look out for, what we've done wrong in the past. Knowledge.
What would that training include? What kind of training would you include with DEI training?
You know, I can't remember what one looked like for me. That's why people always planned them for me.
Interesting.
Okay.
Chris, you want to respond to that?
I mean, that sounds to me like we're going to be hiring some outside agency, most likely from Portland or San Francisco, to give us DEI training. To me, that sounds like a liberal policy. That sounds like liberal politics, democratic politics to me. I don't get it. I don't understand why we're worrying about that stuff. I believe that people are qualified to do the job, and that should be the only thing that matters. I mean, Martin Luther King, he said, judge me by the content of my character, not by the color of my skin. And why the hell are we worrying about skin color or sexual orientation or what your fucking pronouns are? It's so stupid, and it's such a distraction at a moment where we need to come together and find solutions for things locally and federally. And it's such a distraction. The training would be bullshit. It would be costly. It would be a waste of time.
You can get the training for free off the Employment Department website. It's not some big time-consuming thing. And it
Time
doesn't
is not
pertain
free.
to hiring at all.
Yeah, time is not free. Yeah.
So Chris, during the and this was in 2019. This was resolution 2019. It was in 2020, the year 2020. I believe it was in July. This happened. The city of Coos Bay, and Drew Farmer was on the city council at the time, passed a resolution called a resolution of City of Coos Bay regarding support of diversity, equity, and inclusion within the community of Coos Bay. Would you support or not support that type of resolution being introduced into the commission? What would you say to that if someone introduced it? Like John Sweet, he's a big DEI guy. And so, saying that jokingly, so he might put one of those resolutions up for DEI. What would you do with that?
Is this my question?
Yep.
I mean, honestly, I tell you to fuck off. It's so stupid. I sit at these City of Coos Bay council meetings, and each week there are proclamation after proclamation. I mean, the last one, I think there was 4 of them in a row for, Vietnamese Awareness Month and women's history, this and that. And it's like I'm sitting there as a straight white male going, oh, I guess this is the wrong city for me. I mean, I don't know what it's all supposed to mean. I guess that's my privilege speaking. Yeah, the city of Coos Bay is really, really strong on all that stuff. Their next meeting on Tuesday, I believe they have a few volunteer awareness month or something. They're very much into their proclamations and declaring their support for things, and they're not really into solving crime and drug related issues that plague the city. I know I keep bringing that up because it's a very, very real thing. You've got people overtaking Mingus Park. It's a beautiful park. There's criminals and bums and junkies and prostitutes there, and you're not doing anything about it. I mean, one of the city councilors at the last meeting, when I brought this up, said that I'm lying. He didn't say that I'm lying, but he told me that he doesn't see it, that he lives there. He's on the Parks Commission, and he doesn't see it. Carmen Matthews, he's never seen it. And I don't understand how you cannot see it. You can drive down 10th Street and look over and you see them. They're there right now. It's crazy. Absolutely not. Those DEI proclamations and things are a waste of time. They do nothing but distract us from real problems.
Drew, you're next.
Yeah. So we wandered a bit on that one, but related to the people on the streets and in the parks, I serve on the board for city county insurance, and we're at the Supreme Court right now over the Grants Pass case that is the reason that happens. So in terms of doing something about it, I'm part of the entity that has it at the U.S. Supreme Court to do something about it. So there are actions being taken. We got a little ways out there. Rob, could you repeat the question?
Yes. So you were on the city council when you passed the DEI resolution. It was called the Resolution of City of Coos Bay regarding DEI. If that was introduced, say John Sweet was to introduce a proclamation or a resolution with DEI, just exactly similar to what the city of Coos Bay would do, would you support it as a county commissioner?
Yeah, if it's a supporting proclamation, I would go with it. In terms of what I've done personally, I go to some of the pride groups when they hold an event. I've had people reach out to me because they're scared of retaliation in different communities. So I go to those when they're worried. It makes them feel better. So yeah, if the proclamation came up, and the proclamations, there's a lot of them. They take time. I've never felt like I shouldn't be in a room just because proclamations are being read. I don't understand that, but that's probably just something about me. Yeah, they're just general expressions of support. You click through them, and yeah, that's it.
So you kind of hit on this issue that I was going to ask about as well. The city of Grants Pass is challenging the Ninth Circuit District Court's decision that said that it's a violation. I believe it's their 8th Amendment, right? I might be wrong in that, but it's a violation of their rights. One of the amendments to deny homeless people to sleep in the park or on the sidewalk or anywhere that's public property if the city doesn't allow them a place to sleep. In other words, the city or the county should have to provide housing and a bed for these people to sleep, or these people are allowed to sleep on public property. That's going up before the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court decides that it's, and I think it's pretty much going to go for the city of Grants Pass the way it's looking, if they decide to get rid of that decision and say that they don't have a right to sleep on sidewalks and in the parks, what are you as a county commissioner going to do with that decision?
So that opens us up into the second part of that fight, because the state of Oregon codified that in a
legislation.
State law.
Right.
So even when, because I'm thinking they will overturn it at the Supreme Court, that'll throw us into the next battle of lobbying against the state so that they change it as well, so that we can do something about the folks camping on the street. And there's a peripheral opportunity in there as well, that isn't being utilized so much. Folks ask in particular why we don't just use Shutters Creek as a shelter or something like that. There's a lot of reasons, but one of them is that the governor has directly denied the option to communities to establish the camps outside of urban growth boundaries. And I think that's a really bad idea. I think we should be allowed to establish camps outside of urban growth boundaries, because we're meant to build up and dense inside urban growth boundaries, which means we can't get an area that is not fully occupied to put a shelter in. So what I would like to see is, one, we would need to push for an overturning of the law that codified that Grants Pass decision. At the same time, we make a push to allow us to make shelters outside of city limits so that we can put a shelter, not next to somebody's house or school. We tried to move something a little farther away in Coos Bay, but there's just not enough space to where anybody's going to be happy. And then there's other complications with it. Even if they just did a modification, I'd end up down a long rabbit hole and everybody's going to get bored of hearing me talk. The nutshell, though, is push on the legislature to overturn that decision they made that codified it, and push for the option to build shelters outside of city limits. Those are the two things.
Chris, your
Because
turn
we
to
have to
answer.
get people off the street corners.
Yeah, so the Grants Pass thing, Drew tried to kind of paint the picture that he was somehow involved in it because he's involved with the collection of cities that is involved in the lawsuit. But what it comes down to is someone in Grants Pass had the balls to try and change the dynamic with the homeless situation in Grants Pass. And because they pushed the boundary, now this lawsuit has reached the Supreme Court, and it's giving cities across the nation the opportunity to fight back. Hopefully, if this is ruled on correctly by the Supreme Court, and that is important. The process there is important. That it takes somebody at the city or county level to push back on some of these things, get a little edgy, and it forces change. And that's what I'm going to do. I can't really get into specifics about it, but I know that a lot of people sometimes critique the things I say or proposals that I put out there as, well, the state or the federal government won't put up with that. Well, good. Come and sue us, and then we can talk about it at the Supreme Court and push change across the country and kind of be leaders in Oregon or across the country for other cities and counties. Now, I don't want to do that so as to jeopardize our county. You have to balance those things. But essentially, Grants Pass is in the situation because they stood up and took a leadership role and did that. And I think that's something we need around here. In terms of the homeless situation, Drew and his buddies at the Devereaux Center, Tara Johnson and Scott Cooper and these people, they like to refer to it as a homeless problem because it can make you, feel like you need to help them. Oh, these guys just need a home. They need a place to shelter. And it redirects the conversation away from maybe that these people aren't all in need of our compassion. I mean, some of these people that I run into at Mingus Park or in these homeless encampments, not just some of them, a lot of them are felons with active warrants. They're sex offenders living in the woods behind elementary schools. I mean, this is real, and I think we need to separate the bad actors from the good. So there are certainly some people that are deserving of our compassion and our help and belong in a shelter, and we need to help those people. If it's a case where they just simply don't have a place to stay because they've fallen on misfortune. However, there are a lot of these people who have active warrants from outside of Coos County, and they need to be extradited. And if they have warrants from inside Coos County, we need to have a jail that can hold them and a district attorney's office that can prosecute them. And if they are sex offenders living behind an elementary school, like I have encountered sex offenders living behind Blossom Gulch Elementary School in Coos Bay on school property, they need to get them out of there, and they need to prosecute them for doing this. And they need to clean up those camps. There's needles in those camps. I don't understand. I've been trying to push the city of Coos Bay to clean up these camps on city property and on school board and water board property, and they're not doing anything about it. I know our law enforcement is focusing on some seemingly bigger issues. I understand that. I understand they lack funding and resources to accomplish these things, but we have to focus on fighting this group of people from a different angle than just, oh my gosh, let's give these people a sandwich and a 10 by 4 foot shack to stay in, and magically that will solve the problem. That's not going to solve the problem. A lot of these people don't belong in our community, and we need to separate those from the people that are deserving of our help and will actually utilize our help.
Drew, you want to rebut?
Yeah, I understand that reducing it down to we only see this as an easy talking point makes it very hard to, or very easy to argue against what we do. But it's not a mystery to anybody that a bunch of these people are on drugs. A bunch of them are mentally ill. They don't need to be on the street. If you find a pedo that's near a school, they need to be going to prison. We agree. I don't see a problem with that. I've made the call myself several times when I saw somebody that I knew was a registered sex offender too close to a school, because I knew their file. I call it in, get them taken away. The mental health aspect, I lean on that because we know from studies, the average study is going to show you 70% of the people on the street are mentally ill. That means that if we can achieve a robust mental health system, we can address up to 70% of the people on the street, which is going to have a large cross section with the drug issue. And once you've got folks in a supported living situation or a monitored living situation, you can address their use of substances. However, that's going to take state law changes as well. That's what I worked on with Boomer previously, because Oregon state laws don't allow you to do a lot around medications, but that's the extent of the fight. We know this is a broken system, or as Chris puts it, it's a system functioning as intended. It's a system that needs broken and reset properly, which is what I've told folks from time to time I got into government for. Find the bones that are twisted, break them, set them right again. So it's not a mystery to any of us that some of these people need to be in prison. And then we fall down on these public safety issues, jail, officers, and then getting people off the street, giving them more than a blanket and a sandwich, sometimes a bus ticket to get back to where they have housing, because that program is going to be funded for 10 grand this next cycle for the city of Coos Bay. Yeah, these are things we know. But it sounds good to say it the other way.
I'm good.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go for it. Go ahead. If you want to respond, go for it.
I mean, Drew's essentially saying that I have talking points, which is hilarious. I'm not a career politician. So I just heard him talk about like 70% of them are mentally ill and all this stuff. I mean, those are talking points. But anyways, I've been hearing the same things, whether you want to call them talking points or not, from leaders like Drew and Bob Main. I've been hearing these things for years and years and years that, oh, the system has all these issues. There's this problem and that problem, but I don't see any solutions. And all I see is an increasing in this population. I mean, Drew himself at a recent meeting was praising and celebrating the fact that we just increased our homeless count from like somewhere around 400 into the 600 realm. And he thought that was exciting. Now, I believe, for your own credit, I think you were referring to the financial aspect, that we're going to finally get some extra funding based on those numbers. However, I mean, it just proves that the number of homeless that are increasing in this area. I mean, and they're mostly in Coos Bay. Most of the homeless in Coos County are right in your city, and you've been city councilor for 7 years, and this problem has only gotten worse and worse. And I just don't think that you're capable of solving it. And it's time for a new leadership. And I don't understand why you would think that your track record after 7 years of watching this problem increase in Coos Bay, that you would think that Coos County is the place for you, that you should increase your leadership potential to spread these problems all across the county. And you're going to say that's a talking point, but I think it's an actual reality that we would be facing if you became commissioner.
No, I understand the concern. Yeah,
Go for it.
no, I understand the concern. When a lot of the work I do is at the state level, you don't see as much of it as you could, and I don't advertise it as much as I could. The pushing on the state around the mental health hospital, that's obviously a thing that's being done right now. I started that conversation. It took about 3 months, but we got it going, and now there's a lawsuit to try and get a change at the state level, because lawsuits are what make things happen at the state level. The the number around homeless, the thing that was, it was a more accurate point in time count. The number of people homeless here didn't necessarily go up because the count goes up. It means we had more volunteers out there to do the work of finding people. Like when you see a sudden increase in police, you'll often see a sudden increase in people being arrested because you've got more police to find them. There's not much to pick at on that one. I mean, that was pretty simple.
All right, gentlemen, it's been a grueling 2 hours, and I applaud both of you. I like both of you guys. I don't like Drew. I'll be honest, some of your politics I don't like, but I don't always agree with Chris as well. But I like both of you because you're involved, you're engaged, and you came on the show to face off on each other. I wish Bob would have been here. I think this would have even been maybe a little different conversation because he's been there for so long in that positions, and I think that it would have been a little bit different conversation. But I'm going to allow both of you. I'm going to allow you a final comment. I'm going to put you on the screen with your a website where they could contact you, and you can think about what you want to say. I'm not going to cut you off until you're finished, and this is going to be your final statement. And since I started with Chris on the questions, I'm going to start with Drew to allow you the time to say what you want to say to the listeners. And we got a shitload of listeners out there. You guys are doing a bang up job. This has been a very popular show today. So I give you kudos on that because people are very much interested. So Drew, I'm going to let you have your final statement before we get out of here.
Cool. So appreciate everybody bearing with us and enduring listening to us. Appreciate Rob's invite on here and Chris attending. It's always good to get in front of folks, talk to you, even the folks that don't agree with me. I'm happy to listen to you, happy to meet with you. I go to meetings for any party that's available, anybody that wants to talk to me, be all over the county. Something I'd say about myself is I'm from here, and the only reason for me to be here is because I want to do good for this area. The issues folks are facing, this is related to me, to my family, to people I grew up with, my grandparents grew up with. We have a lot of people from outside right now as well, and I think the reason to vote for me is because I'm familiar with what I'm looking at and I've shown I can do something with it. It's been said that we haven't achieved much. When we look at the budget for this year, we can see that the value of Coos Bay's Urban Renewal District and Empires have gone up consistently since 2016, 2017 fiscal year. And that's when I came on council. The problems around mental health, we've watched get worse as the state changes its policies. And I've pushed back on that. I've worked with Boomer Wright around legislation. I'm working with other entities around the lawsuit against the Oregon Health Authority over the state hospital. And I continue to engage with state leaders that have allowed me to make changes like the Executive Order 2302. The commissioners had tried to oppose it earlier the same year. They were unsuccessful. I was able to get it changed this most recent December to get surplus state land for all of rural Oregon. So I can show you the things I've done. I can talk about them. My goal in getting elected is to have more time to focus on these projects. Right now, I've got a day job. People call me when their business or nonprofit has encountered something odd. I negotiate with the Department of Justice, or I work with a slurry of state agencies with little acronyms. And that takes up my time, and city council isn't paid. So to have a career in politics, I think they're supposed to pay you. But yeah, if I get this position, I can spend more time on these projects where we've seen successes for our community and also pay my rent. So that's it.
All right. Well, hold on. We're going to let Chris say of his last word. Chris, you're on.
All right. I think Bob's not here because it's past his bedtime. I think he's pushing 80 years old, and that's the problem. Yeah, essentially, it's less about me this upcoming primary election in May. It's about where do we want the direction of this county to be 4 years later, because it's a 4-year term for Coos County Commissioner. And the question is, do you want Bob, Drew, or me to help this county over the next 4 years? And we've seen what both of them can do. You haven't seen what I can do. Some people see that as a negative. I see it as a positive, that I have not been in politics my whole life. Bob Main was an assessor before spending 15 years as a Coos County Commissioner. He's been in politics and in government most of his entire life. Drew Farmer is the same. He's not as old as Bob, but he's been in politics. He makes his money in politics, in the political realm. He's been the director of various enterprises, nonprofits and things, and they're all affiliated with government and politics. I mean, I started out as a newspaper boy when I was 12 years old, and I've worked for myself or for other people outside of government my entire life. And I have found value in that because I think I resonate better with the people. I think I understand the people and small business owners a lot better than these two guys that I'm up against. They're career politicians, and their mindset and their view of how politics works is only through the lens of a politician. And I see things like you guys do, like when you're having a discussion at your dinner table and you're talking about how the world is crumbling and how our county is not doing things to help with the crime epidemic in the area. I get it, and I'm listening, and I'm fighting to solve these things. I'm doing everything I can as a citizen. I would appreciate the help and the vote so that I can get on the county commission to be one of 3 votes with John Sweet and Rod Taylor. That would be really important because I could help allocate the funds properly to law enforcement without increasing your taxes. There's a lot more that I can do as county commissioner. I can also be a giant beacon of hope for you and a voice of change in this community. You're not going to get that with Bob Main. You're not going to get that with Drew Farmer. You're going to get more of the same shit. You're going to get more of the same explanations and excuses that you hear from politicians every single day. I'm not a politician. I'm a fighter. I'm going to work for Coos County and fight for you. And Drew mentioned essentially that this is going to be a paycheck for him. This is going to be a way that he can quit his day job and work for Coos County. I don't want to make money as a county commissioner. I find it disgusting that we would be paid a salary. I would seek to reduce that salary all the way down to 0 if I can. I'm going to pledge to send my money, if elected. I would send my paycheck back to the sheriff's office until they get that jail fully funded. If we don't have a fully funded jail and a law enforcement operation that's successful in Coos County, I'm not going to take a single dime out of the county budget because we need to prioritize law enforcement above all else, and that means my paycheck. And I would encourage other people to do the same. I know Rod Taylor has proposed a 20% pay cut for the commissioners, and Bob was vehemently opposed to it, which is disgusting to me. He's still getting a pension from being an assessor. He has other sources of income. He does not need to make close to $100,000, and then it's over $100,000 when you put in salary and benefits as a county commissioner. I don't need that kind of money from the public to fight for you. I'm going to do it one way or another, but I hope that you allow me to do it as your county commissioner. And I appreciate the time on the show, Rob. It was quite a long show. Thank you, Drew, for being here. I appreciate the back and forth. That's always good. I'm also having a town hall next Wednesday at 6:30 at the library. If people want to come down and ask me questions, throw anything at me you want. I'm available for questions and a back and forth engagement with the citizens because I feel like that's important.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both for being on. I appreciate it, and we'll see you around next time. Okay, when either of you are elected, if you got to face off in the county commissioner's race, I'll have you whoever wins on in the primary. So I want to thank you, Drew. I want to thank you, Chris. You both have a wonderful night. Okay.
Have a good one.
All right. And I want to thank everyone out there who's been commenting. I mean, damn, we got a lot of comments. I mean, it's just, let's see, Dave, John, the good old boy Sweet needs to go too. Yeah, that's probably true. Let's see what Nunya Business says. Absolutely, Dave, Sweet, above all, needs to go. And Alfonso, what a cool name, Alfonso. Money changes things, he will keep it. And Linda, she says Chris Castleman has our votes. That's a good one. Dave gives a thumb up, and Jerry Miller, thank you, Jeremy. This, like I said, I'm not like the weak-kneed League of Women voters. I'm going to tear into a lot of the issues that they didn't cover during that debate. And this is what people need. They need to see this. And I really wish Bob would have came on here. And I think that's going to be a detriment to his candidacy. I think he's going to find out that people want to hear from their representatives. And I think that Chris and I think that Drew are going to give him a much more bigger challenge than he thought he would. That both of these guys are going to do really well. And this is how I was figuring it was going to happen. I figured that at the beginning of this race that Drew and Bob would be the ones who would go through the primary, because I didn't think either of them would get 50%. And if any of them did get 50%, it would have been Bob Main, because he's the incumbent. He's had a lot of support in the county. He always gets all the votes from the South County. He gets a lot of support from there. However, he's running on a ballot that also has a tax on it. There have been some big mistakes made by the county as far as public lands and private lands. And so I think that he's got a few problems going on with what he's been doing on the commission. So I figured that Bob would get 51% through the primary and he would take this race. However, looking at this now, I'm not sure how it's going to come out. I think it's either going to be Drew and Bob probably come out of the primary and have to face off. I hope that Chris does a phenomenal job, because I see an incredible amount of support for him during Facebook, during my visits to Twitter, all the social media. It seems like they're in favor of Chris, but that's, Drew is all over the place as well. And I'm going to put this out there right now because I haven't kept it a secret. I am endorsing Chris Castleman over Bob Main and over Drew Farmer. I'll be happy to work with whoever wins. I think they both come with their pros and cons. I think all three of them come with their pros and cons. And I just think that we need new blood. We need new blood in the county, and I think we need someone with cojones, big brass cojones, and I think Chris Castleman does that. So I'm putting it out there right now. I am endorsing him, and like I said, I'm putting him as the underdog. I don't know if he's going to make it through, because Drew has a political career. Bob has a political career, and most of the time people like to vote for someone who has a track record, and that's just my opinion on that. And let's see. We got a few more comments here. It says, none of your business, Rob. You look like you are in the deep, dark dungeon. I am, yes. And I got a dominatrix in the corner. She's giving me orders. She's wearing leather and has a whip and a riding crop. It's really weird. It's kind of freaky. I don't know what's going on out there. Let's see. Alonzo Tucker for alive. I'm not sure what you mean with that. Elaine in Oregon, thank you, Rob. Well done. Well, thank you, Elaine. That was very nice of you. That was very, very nice of you. Nunya Business. Yep, Chris Castleman would be the best chance for true change for the better. Nunya Business. I think a lot of people are now looking at that young man as an actual very good alternative to what we have now. And that's why I'm supporting him. I'm supporting him because I think we need people like him in politics. I think he's out of the box. I think he is think willing to challenge the state, willing to challenge the feds, and it's a risk we may take in the county, but we have to take it because the state government of Oregon, they're trying to suffocate counties and cities. And the reason they want to do that is because they want to have authority over counties and cities. And I think Chris Castleman would challenge that authority. So hell yeah, I agree with you. And let's see, none of your business. He's the only one who looks like our savior. LOL. Yeah, you should have seen him in church the other night. Chris did have that Jesus look to him. It was very weird. I was in church going, wow, it was. He looked like that dude from the movie Jesus of Nazareth. I mean, really, seriously, it was wild. I'm sitting there in church going, I'm not sure who I'm talking to. I don't think it's the second coming, but I'm still endorsing him. So what the hell? And we've got let's see, I got a couple of things that I need to tell you people. Let's see, no windmills. Yeah, we're still fighting those windmills, and those windmills are going to be a really, really big problem. I'm not for them, and so we've got a 60-day public comment coming up. I sent it out in my newsletter, and if you guys want to check out my newsletter, I put that out every Monday and sometimes on Friday. For this Friday, I put out a special newsletter because I don't like to bother you people. I don't want to bother you people with nonsense and extra newsletters that you don't want to read. But I do put it out once a week for the show. And this week I put it out on Friday so that I can let you know that the windmills, that there is a public comment, a 60-day public comment that just started. I'm going to be posting that on the Rob blog on my website at robtaylorreport.com. And I highly recommend, if you're watching the show and you want to keep up with what I'm doing and what issues are going on around the county, go to robtaylorreport.com, scroll down on that homepage, and you'll see a subscription where you can sign up for the newsletter. I highly recommend you go check it out, you get signed up, and I'll send out a lot of things. And if you don't want to sign up for the newsletter, it's cool. I dig it. Don't take any offense. Go to the Rob blog page. It's the Rob blog page, and I'll be posting about that 60-day comment period in the next couple of days because it just happened recently, because we are fighting against those windmills. And if you're on Facebook, go to Oregonians Against Wind Turbines. That's on Facebook. Oregonians Against Wind Turbines. Why? Because wind energy blows. We just don't want it here. We don't need it here. And I'm highly promoting this issue because I think it's very important. I got to let you know, Rod Taylor called me this week because they had changed the meeting for the work session that I announced on Monday. And in fact, that work session is now going to be happening. It was supposed to happen on Thursday. It was supposed to happen yesterday, last night, Thursday, and they had to change the meeting to Monday, May 13th at 6:30 p.m. So there's going to be a VOC meeting, a work session on structures in the county right away. That's at the Oaks Pavilion at the Coos County Fairgrounds in Myrtle Point, 6:30 p.m. Monday, May 13th. Once again, this is 6:30 p.m. Monday, May 13th. And if you own property in the unincorporated areas of the county, you need to go to this meeting. I think the county commissioners actually have done a wonderful job of fixing the mistake that I don't know which commissioner made. I think John Sweet really went out of his way to go after property owners. I think he made a huge mistake of trying to enforce the permitting process and the easements, the right-of-way setbacks, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. I don't know why John did that, especially during an election year. An election year where Bob Main, he's already facing running with a tax on the ballot, and then he's got this right-of-way issue. It's almost like John was kind of sabotaging Bob's chance of getting reelected. I don't know. Maybe I'm just wrong there. Maybe just John wanted to go after landowners. I don't know what it is, but they're having that VOC meeting work session on the right-of-ways at the Oaks Pavilion in Coos County Fairgrounds, Myrtle Point, 6:30 p.m. May 13th. That's not this coming up Monday. It's the following Monday, May 13th. So I highly recommend that you go and check it out. Let's see. Oh, no, I didn't want to put that up there. That was wrong. There we go. 3H Tree Service, one of my sponsors. You got to be one badass business to sponsor me because, you know, businesses, I'm very controversial. I'm a controversial character. I make no bones about it. I don't give a crap. And that's why businesses who sponsor me, they have to either really seriously believe in what I'm doing or they have to be self-destructive. I'm not sure which, but 3H Tree Service, those guys are good conservatives. They're Trump supporters, and they'll come out and they'll surgically remove those problem trees for you. And all you have to do to get a hold of them is at 541-294-1800. Once again, that's 541-294-1800. And talk to Matt Holman at 3H Tree Service. And hopefully on Monday, we're going to be playing Where's 3H Tree Service, where you'll get a chance to win $50 if you can find out Where's 3H Tree Service. And we play that almost every Monday. This Monday isn't going to be any different. We should be playing that then. And hopefully you can join me for Monday because we're going to be on at 3 p.m. We're going to be on Rumble and YouTube, same bat channels at 3 o'clock. So I highly recommend you check it out. One of my other sponsors is Tom and Gigs. Tim from Tom and Gigs is him and Shanna, his wife, are good, decent people. They support this show because they believe in free speech, and they have one hell of an automotive business. I highly recommend them for all your automotive needs. If you need a tonneau cover, you need a new bumper, you need to put a muffler on, you need new lights, lighting system, they can do it at Tom and Gigs. I highly recommend you going over there if you need those problems taken care of. And they've got RC cars, those remote control cars. They have those, and they got Tannerite. I always wanted to combine the remote control cars with the Tannerite. I don't know. It could be like a moving target out in the field. You can put, you know, when you go shooting your rifle, so if you got property or if you go shooting out in the one open area in the county, maybe you could put like one of those 4x4 RC cars, those remote control cars, and put some of the Tannerite out there, drive it way out in the field and keep maneuvering it and have your guys trying to shoot that. I think that would be a blast. I don't know. I'm just crazy. I like shooting things and watching them blow up. That's just the kind of guy I am, you know? And of course, Oregon Firearms Federation. I'm going to be talking about a phony gun group the Republicans just created. Why? Because there's a lot of dirtbags in the Republican Party. There's a lot of dirtbags in the Democrat Party. I'm sure every party has their share of dirtbags, but we're not going to put up with these guys, and they created this phony party. I'll be talking about that on Monday. That's why you got to tune in on Monday at 3 o'clock. We're going to be covering a lot of weird things that have been going on in the elections, a lot of weird things that have been happening, and I'm going to finally go over the voters pamphlet. I ran out of time this past Monday, but this coming up Monday, I'm going to do it at the very beginning of the show. We're going to go over the voters pamphlet. So if you want to hear who I'm voting for, and remember, I never tell you who to vote for. Why? Because I believe in your right to decide for yourself based on your own conclusion. I'm just going to tell you who I'm going to vote for, and I'm going to tell you why. And that way we can go over to the voters pamphlet together, and you can see why I'm voting the way I'm voting. It's just something I've been doing for the last 5-7 years, because we used to do it on the Jim Bice show. And that's before every election, right as the ballots were coming out, we'd always on the show do a review of the candidates in the election. So we're going to review the voters pamphlet. It's going to be interesting. But on the side, back to what I was talking about, Oregon Firearms Federation, Kevin Starrett, he's one badass dude. And I highly recommend, don't give money to the Republican Party. Give money to the Oregon Firearms Federation. Why? Because they're actually doing something. The Republican Party, not so much. What are they doing? Well, they're trying to cover their ass of all the mistakes they've made and all the corruption that's going on in the Republican Party. So there you go. Give to the Oregon Firearms Federation. They're the only no compromise gun organization in Oregon. No compromise. That means a hell of a lot. And Kevin Starrett, he's got the steel balls. Let me tell you, steel balls. And he's not going to put up with this crap. He's not going to put up with people trying to take away your Second Amendment rights. And he's fighting against Measure 114. He's the one who took the Columbia County to court over the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance. I mean, the guy's badass. So I highly recommend Oregon Firearms Federation. Now, these guys aren't my sponsors but I do highly recommend them. The Banded Gun Club, they have a trap stand, a five stand trap shoot where they come out from all different directions. You can take your shotgun out there, and it's a wonderful time. Go out there with your pistol on their pistol range. You have to become a member. They give you a little bit of safety notice. Then you can go out there and join the group. It's fun on Saturdays. Incredible stuff. You can catch them at bandedclub.org, and that's in Bandon. And if you want to go shooting with your rifle, I highly recommend Tioga Sports Park. They got a 100-yard range. That's right, 100-yard range. They probably wouldn't let you take one of those RC cars from Tom and Gig and put tannerite on it and shoot it out at the Tioga Sports Park. They probably wouldn't let you do that. But if you want to get more precision with your rifle, if you want to get better at target shooting, you got that AK, you got that AR. Who knows what you have? I don't know. Maybe you just got an old-fashioned 30-30. I don't know. But all those things you can take to Tioga Sports Park and practice on their range, because it's a hell of a time out there. And they're having a pin shoot on May 18th. On May 18th at Tioga Sports Park at 1 o'clock on May 18th, they're having a pin shoot. And you can go to the Tioga Sports Park website. Where is that website? I can't see it on there. It's at tiogasportspark.org, tiogasportspark.org, and you can check out all the information on the first ever pin shoot at their firing range. And, sounds like a blast to me. I might go out there. Maybe we can challenge each other, see who shoots the pin first. I don't know. Sounds like a good time. I highly recommend it because there are a bunch of great people out there. And let's see. I got a couple of comments in here. Let's see. My thing ain't working. I hate when my thing ain't working. Let's go over this here. Let's see. None your business. I receive $50 a month from 3H Tree Service. I know. That's why we got that rule for you there, none your business, that you cannot play the game if you've won within 30 days. So keep that 30-day limit on there, and I don't care how much you play. But remember, only 30 days. If you've won within that 30 days, you're not eligible for winning the prize. Alfonso, maybe he's going to explain this remark, says Tucker is the only documented lynching of a black man in Oregon. Alonzo Tucker, historical marker placed in Coos Bay, Oregon on June 23rd, 2021. Killing of Alonzo Tucker, date September. Yeah, I knew all that. I'm pretty familiar with that. In fact, I've got the book here. I've got the book here on Hangman's Call. Yeah, look at there. I got the book. I know all about lynchings. And by the way, he's the only documented lynching of a black man, but there were other black men who were hung. There were a lot of other people who were hung, mostly white people. So I don't know why we're doing that with Alonzo Tucker. I don't know why he deserved a plaque. Maybe we should have a plaque for everyone who was hung unjustly. Let's see. None of your business. Tim rocks. Yes, he does. He kicks ass. Let's see. Best auto shop in the county. Yes, it is. Kevin Starrett is the only reason that our rights haven't been further eroded. You're damn right. That's absolutely true. And so I'm getting out of here. It's getting late. I'm getting tired. I've got, if you guys are in Roseburg tomorrow around noon, we're going to be having a flag wave for Todd Vaughn. I'm supporting Todd Vaughn over that douchebag Senator David Brock Smith. And Todd Vaughn, we're going to be having a flag wave in Roseburg. All you have to do is go to my Facebook page. It's listed as an event on my Facebook page. And gosh, I can't even think of the area where we'll be at. But it should be a really good time out there. I highly recommend, if you're in Roseburg, stop by, do a flag wave. I'll have extra flags. I always have extra flags. Everyone should have extra American flags. And I try to make sure they're made in America. It's hard to find American-made flags in America. It's incredible. It's it's like everyone's sold out to the Chinese. I don't know what's going on. But definitely tune in Monday at 3 o'clock. I'll be here, and we'll be going over the voters pamphlet, and it should be a pretty damn good time. So, folks, as I always say at the end of the show, Carry on, America. Carry on.